It's only taken about 14 years for me and you to actually do something like this, but we got there eventually. How are you? How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you, my friend. And you?
No bad. I'm not too bad, thank you very much. 14 years, 2007. And whenever I do a podcast, I always tend to start and say, how long have we known each other? And I don't think anyone's been on the show that I've known as long as you. So you win. You're in the lead. You're in the lead. I've known you longer than my wife. That's how far back we go. Mr. Andy Preston, really good to see you. Kind of face to face. We've been speaking obviously regularly on the telephone, but not been able to see each other physically for well over a year now. I'm not sure when we'll see each other again, but welcome to the show. Welcome to TIQ, episode 1 of season 2. And it will be posted as a podcast. So welcome back to everyone. How are you, sir? Busy?
Yeah, good. It's a strange world out there, but doing very well considering the circumstances.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We'll start with a bit of a sort of synopsis on how we know each other, which is kind of our story, which is my time down south, and we obviously met in London through the Black Star Academy group. And thereafter, you took me under your wing, and people probably won't realize that I didn't like cold calling at all, did I? I hated it with a passion, and you managed to, I think you managed to kind of move me on from where I was then, certainly to where I am now. Got a lot to thank you for. But yeah, I used to travel up to Manchester, and we used to go to Sale Sharks for your breakfast meetings, and it seems like a lifetime ago now.
Yeah. Long time, my friend.
Are you missing the physicality, I assume, and how have you found things over the last 12 months in general?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting market. Obviously, it's very different from my usual traveling. It's actually 12 months now since I've been on an outbound flight from the UK, and 12 months since I've been at South Africa, which is very painful when you're living in Manchester and it's snowing and -7 the other day and cold. Welcome to Qatar for you guys and Manchester for me, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a very different world. We're traveling the world virtually now from sunny Stockport in South Manchester. It's kind of not quite the same.
No, I'll bet. -7's not that bad. I've been in -13 in Aberdeen, so you've got absolutely nothing to complain about. But I hate the cold, so that's why I've been out here for over 10 years. Yeah. Listen, I've always thanked you for what you did for my confidence. I've always been a good networker, but when you pick up that phone and you're trying to beat the gatekeeper, or having the motivation to go out and cold call all those years ago, it was kind of the start of that journey of reaching out for help and not assuming that you can do it by yourself. Managers are good in certain circumstances, but sometimes you need a trainer and someone motivational and a friend, which obviously we've been friends for a long time now, to give you that kick up the backside. So, and I don't think that the story kind of does itself justice until we get to when I had that interview for KPS in London, and there was only one person that I was going to phone and say, I really want this job. Things weren't going very well down south. I'd only been in Cambridge and in the southeast of England for about a year, and the job opportunity came along, and I think we both remember the phone call pretty well, and it was quite simply, how do I get this job? And going into that interview, at the number one, I was the first in the interview out of, let's say, I think it was about 12 people. There was 2 job positions in Dubai. There's 2 job positions in Doha. And I called you and said, how do I get this job? And do you remember the 2 things you said?
I do. You can relate for everyone, Joffrey, because it's funny.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it. The first one was, there was various things. Number one was go through the interview, and at the end, they're going to say, have you got any questions? And for God's sake, don't ask about salary. Never ask about salary. So that was tip number 1. But the second one was ask them 2 questions. and try and close the sale. The fundamental was to close the sale. You're selling yourself. You want to sell products. This is the job that you're going for as sales, account manager, account director. But at the end of the day, you're still selling yourself. And the first question was, from what you've seen or heard of me today, do you think I could fit into your team? And you were very ballsy and said they won't say no because they won't want to upset you. And sure enough, Alex Hunt and Chris Watson said, yeah, I think you could really fit well into the team. And they obviously appeased my question. And then was the close was, okay, can I have the job? Close the sale, which took them aback. It really took them aback. They were like, well, you know, we've got other people to see, and you're the first interview, and you know, we've got 10 or 12 people to see. And it's like, yeah, but you've just told me I can fit into your team, so can I have the job? Why would you need to interview anyone else? And the feedback that I got from Chris Watson after I was obviously offered the job and came out to Doha, I was in Dubai at one of the furniture exhibitions or design exhibitions that we had done. And I got speaking to the managing director at the time, Chris Watson, and he said that no one else asked those questions. So it's interesting. And again, we'll come on to the whole salespeople aspect. It's interesting how many people don't ask for the sale. Doesn't matter what you're selling. You've always got to ask for it. If you don't ask for it, you don't want it. And that was quite interesting. So yes, much thanks. Wouldn't be where I am with the fundamental of getting out to Doha. Wouldn't have got out to Doha without asking those two questions. So no matter what I've achieved and what I'm going to hopefully achieve in the future, it wouldn't have happened without picking up the phone. So kudos to me for picking up the phone. Kudos to you for giving me the tips in the interview. So
it even overcame the suit you wore, if I remember rightly.
Oh, that would be so having been speaking to Chris in the same conversation, we got to the sort of towards the end of our chat at the end of the second day, and he said, but did Alex tell you that you nearly never got the job? And I said, well, why was that? And he said, because of the suit that you were wearing. So I've then gone and drifted over to Alex, who if he watches this will probably nod his head and go, you looked ridiculous. I think he called me a mint humbug because I was wearing a brown, and I thought it was quite a reasonable look. It was, you know what I mean, a tall guy, you know, the pinstripe suit, a nice sort of, I think it was a green Paul Smith shirt and tie combo. But when you think back, it was like, yeah, I can see exactly. I mean, I was brown socks, brown shoes, you know, brown belt. It was all succinct. But then when you think about it, I thought, what must I have looked like? But at least he remembered it. Hey,
yeah,
no such thing as bad PR. But I don't think I ever got over it. I don't think Alex ever let me forget it. But no. Yeah. So let's talk. That's enough about my sort of career and where I went from. Scotland to England, 2007. We met in London. We've been firm friends ever since. And since coming out to Doha, we've obviously stayed in touch, and you've come out. But let's take a step back and obviously introduce you and who you are. Andy Preston, motivation and motivational speaker and sales trainer extraordinaire. We'll come on to your followers and you know what you've done in the past 15, maybe 20 years since you've started speaking. But let's start with how you got there. You were in procurement first, is that right?
Yeah, so I was actually a trained professional buyer. It was my job to beat up salespeople for a living. Which is
what as I can testify to, is what procurement guys do. Procurement guys do all the time. Did you like procurement?
Yeah, I found that the challenge was fun because I was in a market where I was spending a lot of money for the pharmaceutical company that I worked for, and I probably had about 20 different providers or potential vendors who all wanted my business. So I probably could play anybody who was talking to against the other sort of 19 or so and really get some good prices. And I quite enjoyed the kind of negotiation, the backwards and forwards, the kind of working out who I was going to use and setting up, you know, not traps for them, but setting up things that I wanted to see. And if they couldn't demonstrate that, I was counting them out of the process. And I enjoyed the kind of cut and thrust of that. And it really kind of showed me what most salespeople do wrong in the process that stops people buying into them and then obviously stops them buying from them. It was some great examples of what not to do, definitely from my procurement days.
And therefore, I think it was a fairly simple, listen, these guys are not cutting the mustard here. This is what they're missing. Did you then reverse engineer that to then go into sales, knowing what procurement managers are looking for, and therefore adapted your techniques to ensure that you answered their questions?
Yeah, and I think it was really a couple of things. I was enjoying the procurement job, but I was kind of thinking, what's next for me? The company got taken over, so a lot of us got offered redundancy. I thought, well, maybe this is a chance for something new. Plus the fact that back then in my early 20s, salespeople got a car paid for, a mobile phone paid for, expenses, commissions that we didn't get as procurement. I thought, well, the guys who come to see me haven't been that good. How difficult can this be? Let's give sales a go with all the perks that come along with it. Very naive viewpoint, as I quickly realized a few weeks into my sales role. And I was hopeless at first, did all the wrong things, actually saw how difficult it was. But then the insight of the buying background and watching what I did to salespeople without them realizing in terms of negotiation before we'd even started a negotiation, that knowledge was invaluable in me then turning into a top performing salesperson.
That's it's interesting that you've admitted that you've gone in with this kind of gung-ho attitude and then realized, I now see the difficulties. And of course you knew the type of people that you were coming up against because you were that person in a previous life. But you didn't do it by halves, did you? You didn't go into something that was simple. You went into stationery. I mean, of all the industries to cut the sort of your cloth at, why stationery? Was that just the opportunity that was there, or did you really want to see how good you could be?
Well, I think for me, the thing that hit me when I was kind of sold at the interview by my then or future boss at that stage, who hadn't been taken on yet, and he kind of sold me on the industry in that effectively when you're dealing with sort of printing and office supplies, everybody's a potential customer. So actually the market is vast. He sold me on the opportunity within the marketplace, and I knew how much I'd spent as a buyer on printing and office supplies. So I thought, well, if that's my experience times every other business, this should be a massive opportunity. What he didn't tell me is the barriers and the sort of restrictions in the way. Sold me the dream. I kind of signed on the dotted line, and then about 3 weeks in, I realized what I'd walked into.
Yeah, I bet. Forgive the sort of football manager analogy, but were you given time? No. So
no, it's a market where you're kind of expected to hit the ground running, and it's high turnover, low profit, so it's activity based. You've got to be busy and building up a reputation in the market, because I hadn't come from the market can be quite incestuous in that industry. So you generally move from one company to another. So you'd bring customers with you. You'd have a knowledge of what you're doing. You'd know the products. You'd know sales. I kind of walked in not knowing the industry, not knowing any potential customers, not really knowing sales. And the learning curve had to be quite fast, particularly because I think we still follow this process these days, is you had a sort of a 3-month probation where they decided they were going to keep you on or not. So that was kind of a bit of pressure saying, well, hey, I've gone from being a fairly well-paid professional buyer to change my sort of career here. I kind of need to make this work, and within the first 3 months, or I've got a problem.
Did you ever regret taking the risk, not having that stability, not having the salary, or was it a case of, I've committed now, I'm not going back?
It was more a case of, this is what I've done, you know, and particularly because salespeople don't have a great reputation in the general public. I kind of thought, well, I'm not only going to lose face, it's going to be very embarrassed in front of my family and friends, but this is a real challenge, and I kind of have to make this work, because I actually don't know where I go next. Because then, you know, do I go back to buy a professional buying role, my tail between my legs? I don't really fancy that. I quite like what I think we can do in sales, but I need to be able to get there and at least justify my own position first, to then kind of put my plans into action.
Fair enough. So you've gone from a position of being the buyer themselves, recognizing the mistakes, taking on a role in one of the hardest industries, with a product or a catalog that everyone sells from, with the same reference numbers, products, and for the audience benefit, you were selling at 20% higher because your company was part of a franchise. What was the pivotal moment that started to allow you to become successful? Don't tell me it was the Hail Mary in Manchester, which you have to tell the audience about that.
Yeah, I think for me, it was thinking differently about it. And I suppose this is with the work I do now, is I change the way people think about what they're having to do day to day from a sales point of view. And for me, I'd kind of seen the negatives of the position. I go, oh, you know, I'm selling exactly the same product as everyone else. I'm selling the same service, the same quality, the same delivery, and I'm more expensive. So I've got to come into a business to meet somebody that I don't know yet and doesn't know me, to sell them exactly the same thing they're buying now from a supplier they're probably already happy with, and I've got to get them to pay more. I was like, that just seems an impossible task.
Yeah.
But then I started to think, well, actually, if I'm selling the same product, there's actually nobody out there who can beat me on quality because it's the same. There's actually nobody out there who can beat me on service because it's going to be the same. There's nobody out there who can beat me on delivery because it's the same. So all I really have to do is to make them believe that I'm worth paying a premium for, say 15, 20% premium. I've got to make them believe that I'm worth that and kind of demonstrate that somehow in what I do and be of enough value to them that they would willingly pay the premium. So when somebody comes in a lower price, they still stay with me or go with me in that situation. So that change of thinking was the start of a process that then got me to try and differentiate or stand out. And for me, this is a real crux of what I do now. It was having gone through that experience. It was horrible at the time. As you can imagine, I got lots of price objections. I blame marketing, I blame some pricing policy. And actually, really, it's just down to me having to handle price objections better. That was probably the best thing I ever went through because that situation forced me to find a way of selling that wasn't about trying to sell the benefits of the product or the benefits of the service or how great we are in delivery. I had to find a way to stand out as an individual and justify a higher price. And without that experience, I definitely wouldn't be doing what I do now.
And as you just touched on, stand out, was that the inspiration? And at what point did you move into, well, I can teach people to do this? So how long did it take you to go from the procurement career and going into sales to then being in a position to teach people your methodologies and your standout selling?
Yeah. So it kind of, the situation forced me to try and stand out and justify the higher price, which is where the basis of what I do now comes from. It's probably a transition over about a 10-year period, just over 10 years, where I'd kind of then gone from buying into a selling role, started to do particularly well, particularly when I changed my mindset, started to get some results, that gave me more confidence. And then I'd somehow, I don't particularly think I'm anything special. I don't think there's anything I've achieved that other people couldn't achieve or even more than I did, but it was forced by the situation. So rather than kind of be defeated by it, I chose to see it as a challenge and kind of rise up and confront it. So then I was promoted to sales director. And I thought, well, I've got a team of people now. I don't think I'm anything special. I don't think that I'm doing anything dramatically different to other people. And what I'm doing, I think, is just kind of what I do naturally. That wasn't the case, of course. I'd learned over the years what to do by usually doing it wrong first and then doing the opposite. But it just felt natural to me because it was just what I was now doing. It was a learned behavior over time, but it felt natural because I'd done it for that long. And then I really couldn't understand when, as a sales director, why when I would talk to my sales team, they wouldn't bring in the same deals I did. They wouldn't be able to get the answers that I got. They wouldn't be able to have the same conversations and really understand what people were looking for and find the angle to persuade them to move suppliers. And I thought, well, hang on a minute. I didn't think I was anything special, but I'm obviously doing something that other people aren't doing to have got to the position I'm in, as the top salesperson in the country. And I need to kind of impart some of that wisdom somehow of whatever on earth I'd done to these guys to help them. So it was then that I started to break down what I'd done into a process and systems and principles and techniques and tactics. So I was able to kind of teach and train that to my team. Having done that, they suddenly started getting some great results. I thought, well, it's actually not about me. It's about the approach. It's about the systems. It's about the techniques and strategies I was using. So that means it's trainable to other people because now not only have I done it, the guys underneath me have proved it. So, and then you kind of go, well, where am I going in my career? Do I still want to be knocking on doors? Because starting in that business, you know, when you started out in that business, you were 60 doors a day, physically cold calling. And then kind of your reward on a Friday or whatever day you're in the office was to ring up the 200 odd people you'd already seen that week and try and convince them to meet with you the next week to try and convert them into a provider. I thought, well, I don't really want to be knocking on doors in my 40s and 50s. The only way for me to progress in the industry was to buy a business or buy a franchise. And I didn't really want to commit the money and effort and collateral required to do that. And I thought, well, I actually quite enjoy the training side. It gives me the same buzz that I got out of closing deals as a salesperson. Maybe I could do this for other companies. And that's kind of what started me looking at that as a possibility. And then looking at my industry, I thought, well, you know, everything's getting more digital at that time, as it is even more so now. The requirement for print is going to be going down. Therefore, the requirement for office supplies will go down. The industry is going to go through a bit of a restructure, and people will take over each other. They'll kind of rationalize the market. It's probably a good time to make that move. So that was my decision to move into speaking and training. Having seen a couple of speakers, and again, probably like as a buyer, thought, well, there's nothing there doing that I don't feel I could do. Again, slightly naive view, as probably a little bit of salesperson overconfidence. I fancy having a go at that. So that was my inspiration to go into it. Plus the fact that I'd struggled to find somebody, because I got to a stage in my team that no matter how good the manager is, sometimes the team just stopped listening to them. And I kind of got to the stage where with my team, I wanted somebody else to come in and have a different voice. And I really couldn't find anybody in the sales market that was credible enough to hold the guys' attention that my guys would respect. So I thought, well, hang on a minute. If I'm a sales director with that problem, and I looked at 70 odd different individuals and companies and couldn't put anyone in front of them I thought was any good, I thought, well, if I'm having that problem as a sales director, other sales just must have this problem. There must be a market for me here. So really not knowing anything about the market and what was achievable, apart from seeing a couple of speakers, and thought, well, I think I've got some good content. Let's kind of give it a go. Again, probably like the move from buyer to salesperson, more about let's set up a challenge. And I fancy this rather than being a very strategic move that was all planned out over years. That was kind of the process.
But where did you start? I mean, did you go to your existing clients? Did you look at friends? I mean, we'll touch on it about what you've got with regards to recommendations and references and clients that allow you to advocate what you do. But at the very start, you had nothing. You had yourself and your own team. So literally, you were going into job interview after job interview to try and get more training work. What was your approach to win the sales? You're obviously taking your abilities to sell yourself, which was similar to what we said about the interview process. How did you start? And what would what would be your tips for new entrepreneurs that are looking to go into business, that have maybe been enforced that they have to go into business because they've been made redundant or lost their job or whatever the case may be, and they need to go into something? How did you start, and what would be your key tip?
So kind of what my push was, I couldn't really go to existing clients because I had a restrictive covenant from my company, that I couldn't contact them even with a different business offering. It was a very incestuous industry. People moved around. The company was kind of convinced I was going to move to someone else or move somewhere for a few months and then move on again to get around the covenant. But I was moving out the industry, so it didn't bother me. I couldn't go to my existing clients. The companies and my competitors that you can often go to when you move companies, I couldn't go to because it was a very high volume, low profit industry. So there wasn't the money to pay for the development that I wanted to do. So I thought, well, that's probably not the best thing to do. I need to go out and find new markets. So at the time, there was a big push on business networking around breakfast events. So I attended a few of the breakfast events, met more people who were self-employed and working by themselves back then. And that started to give me more of a flavor, plus the fact you're pitching your business every week at the people around the table and to get them to recommend and refer you. So that kind of helped me kind of hone my message and what I was trying to do. And then it was purely new business. So literally, for me, it was back to what I was good at. And in the early days, and the same approach wouldn't necessarily work these days. I'll come on to tips in a minute. But for me, it was literally picking up the phone and doing prospecting. So we're talking, I would have 1,000 weeks where I'd make 1,000 phone calls across a week and sift through, because I didn't know who were the companies I should be approaching, who were the kind of people I should be approaching. So I had to just do high levels of activity to kind of hone my market. And again, the amount of activity I was doing, my pitch was getting much better because I was sharpening it on all the people I was speaking to. I'm not saying I spoke to 1,000 people, but I'd set myself up to do, kind of 200 calls a day in a week where possible. to give me my 1,000. And that was how I started that approach, and then honed and refined it over time. We're doing that now. There's a lot more tools available than there were back then. But I knew if I wanted to make a success of this and bring some revenue in, I had to go, high levels of prospecting, as a lot of salespeople do when they start a new position. I had to get out to the marketplace, find my market, find the messages that would work with the market, and get in front of people to be able to pitch the offer. And again, without putting that effort in, I wouldn't have survived the first 6 months, because they're always the toughest in any business.
Absolutely. It's not just going to come to you. So that was how many years ago?
That's just over 17 years ago now.
17 years ago. And as we touched on, 25,000 followers on LinkedIn with well over 330 recommendations. You must be absolutely stoked and really proud with the amount of recommendations and the positive vibes that you get back. And I know that you're really proactive with ensuring that those recommendations are increasing. Do you have a particular favorite that has stood out, over the past few years? Which one?
There's one actually today. Let me find it, because it's actually on my phone here. And this was about 4 years ago in Manchester, just because this signified that I was having the impact that I wanted to have with somebody, and I found it funny. So the guy came to a speech in Manchester, and I'll read this on my phone as I'm here. And it says, it was a connection request on LinkedIn. And he said, you had the stage moved on Wednesday. And I thought, who the F does this guy think he is? By the end of your slot, I thought they should have made us all go to your house. It was that good. But you know this, I'd like to add you on LinkedIn. That's my favorite. Out of all the stuff I've got, I've got Andy Preston to help me close a £500,000 deal. I've got Andy Preston changed my life. That person was from Stoke-on-Trent in the UK. Probably didn't take that much. I've got some amazing testimonials. That's probably my favorite, because that's just, I had an impact on that person. I've done my job that day. That kind of made me smile a little bit. So yeah, it's in my memories today. That's my favorite.
It's gone in with this guy with a completely negative footing, and then you've taken him into massive positive. That's fantastic. You've obviously traveled quite a bit. You wrote that. Well, that book's on hold now, isn't it?
Yep.
How to get to platinum with Qatar Airways, and how to get to relevant status with was it Radisson Blue or Parking?
Yeah.
Signing up to the relevant clubs and relevant benefit packages. Traveling the world was something that you enjoy and that you enjoyed. I mean, you've been to pretty much every continent, I imagine, all the way down to. Did you go to New Zealand for the Lions tour?
Yep.
You did,
New Zealand twice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You've been to Japan. The World Cup.
Yeah, Rugby World Cup.
Yeah, I thought so. So you've obviously travelled, but you're not traveling anymore. How have you found it over the past 12 months, and what have you done to pivot to keep things moving forward and keep that momentum going with these followers, with these recommendations? Clearly, the digital world is even more important now. Hence, we're having this interview 3,500 miles away, you in Manchester and me in Qatar, and this is becoming the norm now.
Yeah, and I think it's been a strange world indeed. So I've still got a suitcase and 2 guitars in Cape Town, because I'd flown over to speak at the Global Speaker Summit in Namibia on my topic of upgraded, how to get more upgrades as you travel. I got an upgrade on Qatar Airways out there, so I'd taken the pictures of me in business class on the Dreamliner. I got an upgrade in the hotel, and that was kind of my thing, to talk to other speakers about how to do that and how to have fun while you travel. That was my last speech before I flew back to Cape Town and then on to Bali for a friend's wedding. And having left a couple of my guitars and a suitcase in Cape Town, intending to travel back there, the world kind of went a bit strange while we were in Bali for my friend's wedding. We had a James Bond style escape on fishing boats, bribing people to take us to different islands, driving across the island, flying into the main airport, crashing in my mate's room who was in Bali for a speaking gig at the same time.
But didn't you have to escape for a boat? Didn't you have to escape for a boat?
Yeah. Yeah, and we had to pay a small fishing boat to take us to the next island because they were locking down all the islands, and we wouldn't have got away. I mean, being stuck in Bali is not so bad for a few weeks, but a year, would have been challenging. So it was a big shift in focus. Managed to get the last flight through Qatar before you guys shut down, so I could get back to the UK, and then landing back in the UK, suddenly everywhere shut down.
Yeah. And then it was like, right, what the hell am I going to do now?
Yeah, and I suppose I'm lucky in that we invested quite heavily in running sessions from here. So because I've been international, I've trained and spoken in 42 countries now, physically face to face. I'd always got an international client base anyway, so I was doing sessions from hotels while I was traveling. So compared to what I do now on the digital side, I wasn't doing as much or anywhere near the quality I'm able to deliver now in terms of the kit I have and the setup we have here. But I'd kind of been able to do a bit anyway. Luckily, my video guide worked with quite closely. We've done 8,000 hours of recorded and edited video together before this year. So we got a lot kind of in the background, but suddenly we had to go fully digital. And what that did was twofold. First of all, it made sure that we had to make sure from here we could deliver stuff. So I'm stood here now in front of 3 screens and a graphics tablet and 3 machines and a laptop and separate lights we got set up, and we having a stage built in the corner of the studio that we got 14 different cameras available used and all kinds of stuff we would have never done until this market kind of forced it. So I decided, again, wanting the challenge like I did moving from buying into sales and sales into training and speaking, I want to be at the forefront of this and lead this and kind of give my clients the best value I possibly can, thinking it would only last for 3 to 6 months. Whereas we're now 12 months down the line and I'm looking at a major impact for at least the next 12 months, probably some sort of impact for the next 5 years and a small impact forever into this market. What it did do, however, is it suddenly made virtual training and virtual speaking kind of acceptable to clients. Yeah. That before we'd said, no, we want everyone in the office and want you here, and we want a full day's training. Suddenly, because they're forced into a situation where their staff are all sat at home on the laptops or on the phones in some cases, it made it A, possible to do that kind of training, and B, it was accepted by clients. So a massive shift into purely digital. The stuff we've got here, the software we have, the hardware we have, and the support of Dave Richardson at Rich Media Group, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now if it wasn't for him. That has been a massive shift for us. And I now, clients tell me I'm leading the field, leading the market, leading the sales world in terms of virtual delivery. So that's a position I'm proud to occupy. And I'm getting probably, and I would like to think I got pretty decent feedback face-to-face. You'll see on LinkedIn.
Just to make sure that Rich TV get their plug. We all know that he's 70% of your success. Let's be honest.
No, of course, 80. The rest is, I just fill in the blanks around it. Yeah, but that was really a massive shift, and the fact we're able to do that, and I got pretty decent feedback before for face-to-face. My feedback for the virtual stuff that I now do is even better than that. So this will always be a part of the business going forward. And it's developed areas of training and kind of skill retention and being able to take people forward that would just not have been possible face to face. So yeah, we've put the hard work in. We've definitely invested in it, both time and money, but it's definitely paying dividends, and the feedback we're getting from clients is fantastic.
I was watching a video just before we came on air. I was watching Rob Moore, and Rob Moore's just got, I think he's gone in about 50, 60 grand sterling on the studio because, virtual events, one-to-one events, various things like that, webinars, he's probably leading it with regards to the property training and other aspects of, success training that he's doing. So you're right, people are having to pivot in that way. On the sales team side of things, and generally, we've been in sales for many, many years collectively, regional sales managers, territory sales managers, out this part of the world, you've got people that are within the Middle East, never mind a region within the UK. Mm-hmm. People were flying from, let's say, Aberdeen to London or Aberdeen to Manchester. People were flying from Doha to Dubai, Dubai to Doha. They were flying to Egypt and various, Baltic countries as well. That no longer has to happen in the same way that you don't necessarily, as much as you want to, fly to South Africa to perform on stage and spend 4 to 6 weeks away from a home that you've never spent as much time at home in your life. or certainly for the last 17 years. That's a massive shift. But from an industry perspective, it is now accepted, but the trust level of managers it's had to go up exponentially, or it's exposed the sales teams or account managers and sales executives and BDMs for being lazy or for being reactive instead of proactive. And of course, those figures will show and their demeanor will show within those meetings, and where they may not have lost their positions because of they weren't being made redundant, they are now because they're being exposed. The whole spectrum has shifted with regards to not only has the events industry changed, not only are meetings now being held virtually, stakeholders can meet more regularly. I think there's probably too many meetings happening for the sake of meetings happening, because where a phone call was sufficient before, everyone wants to jump on Zoom or everyone wants to jump on Teams. So it does have that positive and negative effect. Is that now falling into part of your training as well about how to meet properly and how to hold sales meetings or how to sell properly? And in your opinion, how is the removal of the human emotion when it comes to buying? Because we all buy on impulse, certainly if it's things for ourselves, especially if we can go to Germany and maybe pick up a car and drive it back because it's on human emotion. If we're now doing everything digitally, how is that changing the way we sell? And how do we do that to recreate that human impulse?
Yeah, I think, Geoffrey, is a great question, because there's a massive shift here. This is the biggest shift of any of our lifetimes personally, and definitely probably the biggest shift in the sales world ever. In the kind of thing I'm saying now is we've had two things come together at once, one of which is a kick to probably 10, 15 years in the future of what would have happened digitally in time. It's just we've got that now forced upon us. So there's a massive shift in technology and how we adapt to that in terms of salespeople, and not being able to see people face to face in most circumstances, and an impact of sometimes even a year or two in the future, some people won't want to see you as easily. And as salespeople, we should be more precious over our time and not commit to flying everywhere and having lots of long day meetings and traveling when we can be more effective virtually in most circumstances. Whereas, there's some outliers to that don't apply, but most of the time we can manage our time far better. The challenge is, of course, not only can we not get to see people face to face, the sales veteran of 30, 40 years can't read body language well over a Zoom. They can't shake hands. They can't generate rapport. They can't run the meetings they normally do. They can't go and have a drink and play golf and kind of go to the braai. The South Africans go and have a barbecue, whatever. They can't do any of that normal kind of social stuff. So the kind of thing I'm leading with to most clients is salespeople right now are trained and experienced in a market that no longer exists. Salespeople right now are trained and experienced in a market that no longer exists.
Everyone's at ground zero, unless they've been ahead of time and they've preempted it. Marketing, I think marketing versus sales is still obviously well ahead when it comes to social media, but selling is still very new. No one's really selling. They're advertising, they're marketing, they're drawing in those responses, but actually selling face to face as we are on Zoom in a virtual environment has never really been done, because it wasn't the done thing. You had to be physical. You had to be emotionally and physically connected to the buyer to get that right answer. It was always recommended, never try and sell over the phone, try and get the commitment, try and get the bite of the cherry, but there was never a need, because you could get in the car and you can go and physically meet them. And because the territories were so contained, now the world is smaller than ever, much smaller than ever. So we've now got opportunities to sell and become global, because 7+ billion people, you only need 0.001% of those 7 billion people to buy from you. With a bit of marketing and a bit of video selling, is it going to be that there is zero interaction? Maybe not zero, but it's going to be the minority of people that are selling digitally. It's now going to be a full marketing shift, and video selling is going to be the new way. Or is there still going to be an opportunity to sell on webinars and sell on one-to-ones?
I think there are a few things at play. So culturally, certain cultures prefer face-to-face. they'll go back to face faster, but they won't all go back to face straight away. Some people are not willing to put themselves in a situation like if I was an event organizer right now, I don't know many people that want to go and sit in a big room with 1,000 other people that they don't know, literally on top of them on the chair that's kind of jammed in at a big conference. I'm not sure that's top of people's agendas. I think some people are wary, particularly if they're older people, about letting a financial advisor they don't know come into their home and do a review, for example, that would have been perfectly natural 2 or 3 years ago. So I think there's a cultural shift in terms of what people are prepared to put up with or accept themselves. I think there's a shift in terms of how people do business. So for a salesperson being used to kind of having somebody's attention for an hour and a half to 2 hours in a long meeting, what we're now finding is people are jumping from one Zoom or Teams meeting to the next one and the next one. So you've got to be really sharp and memorable and run your sales process completely differently. Because instead of an hour and a half with the customer, you might have 20 to 30 minutes on Zoom, and that's a hard stop at the end of that. And then they jump on the next one and go, oh, sorry, Simon, I'm late. I was just blah, blah, blah. And then you've suddenly got 25 minutes for that person. And then you've got another one and another one. So using the same slide decks you would have presented with face-to-face, having the same sort of meetings, the same rapport building, it's entirely different. And if salespeople don't get their head around that, that's going to hurt their figures. It's going to hurt the career and potentially even lose them from the industry. It's a massive disruption, the biggest disruption we've ever seen. We kind of need to get on board with it. There are challenges with it. There are also opportunities with it, but only for the people that choose to embrace it. So for my training's been a massive shift. I've kind of been doing some digital selling training anyway. We're now doing a lot more on selling over Zoom and Teams, running different sales processes. For the buyers and decision makers from a new business point of view, the decisions change. Again, we've got the kind of nadir of having a tough marketplace as well as a pandemic, as well as a shift to digital. So in a tough market, decisions go up. They're generally going to be ratified or signed off by a higher person, or it's gone as high as possible. It's going to have to be signed off by a group of people. So decisions have been made differently. Sales pipelines are stretched because decisions are taking longer to go out. You've got to be able to justify it more. It's all these kind of things that come with almost a perfect storm for the standard or the average salesperson has a whole world of problems that they need to get on board with and kind of look to lead the market. Most of my clients now are working with me because they want to lead the market in digital selling. My new book, because obviously the upgrade one is pointless to finish writing for now. My new book is Digital Selling, How to Sell Digitally, Virtually, and Remotely. We're just playing around with the exact titles. It's going to be digital selling, remote selling, virtual selling. Everyone seems to call it different things, but it's been able to sell in the digital world when you can't get face-to-face with people. The majority of sales will be done like that for the next 2 years. Yeah. So do we get on board with it, or do we just sit there and cry about it? Those are kind of your choices, really.
Yeah, I don't think we've got much of a choice. And again, I think it's enforcing salespeople to be more disciplined with their time. Can you imagine leaving a client sitting on a Zoom or a Teams for 5 minutes? Please wait while someone lets you into the meeting, and you're not there, and God forbid it's more than 5 minutes. Then the first impression is negative. If you've got a physical meeting, they're still carrying on with what they're doing while they're waiting for you, and sometimes can't really be bothered, or most of the time can't be bothered, and hoping that you're not going to turn up. So yeah, it does have a massive shift on the discipline aspect as well. It's really good to finally do this with you. It's great that because I've kept in touch with you throughout the pandemic to understand how you were going to do this. All jokes, we've had jokes all the time, and you've been my mentor and my trainer for 13 years. Yet I also give you a kick in the backside about going on to virtual training, about taking the content that you've had for years and years and putting it online. Yes, you've got a YouTube channel, but finally you've now got not a reason, but this is a must. You can't get away from it. If you can't do the physicality, then the digital and the remote is a necessity. And as we've said, jokes aside, Dave is a great ally and partner of yours to put that digital element together. Will it ever go back to anywhere near what it was before, in your opinion? Or will people just take
Kind of. So I view this as almost like a bit of a pendulum swing. that it's swung to one extreme into full kind of global lockdown, and it's on its way back. We kind of get, somebody keeps tweaking it every now and again. We get another lockdown, they pull it a bit further away, and it'll swing back to something like it was, but only 80 to 90%. And it's going to take a couple of years to do so. So there's got to be some, people have to adapt in some ways. I'm not sure that theatres will be operating the same way. Cinemas will be operating the same way. I would imagine we could quite easily lose a lot of hospitality businesses here in the UK. The amount of pubs we have. I think also people's habits have now changed for a long period of time. So it's been 12 months here in the UK in pretty much some sort of lockdown. I think with the money that some people have saved during that time, because they're not putting petrol in the car, they're not buying the clothes to work they would do because they're not going anywhere. Half the time they're wearing a Zoom suit, so a nice top and shorts or God knows what underneath. So they're not spending the same money on clothes. They're not spending the same money on food. They're not spending the same money in restaurants and going out because they can't. So I think there's been a shift in buying behavior personally. And yes, when we kind of let free from the restrictions eventually fully, there'll be a short-term uplift of people doing the stuff they've not been able to do. But longer term, I've got friends who are saying, you know, I'm not going to spend the same money on going out. I'm going to go out half as often. But then I'm going to go and have a proper holiday that I've wanted to do, to reallocate where they're spending. A friend of mine had 2 gym memberships before this. He's now put a gym kit in his house and no longer has gym memberships because he couldn't go anyway. Half the time here we've been locked down. But there's been a real shift in how people make decisions personally and professionally. That's not going to change.
Yeah, it's enforced a lot of things. You know, if you can't go anywhere, you can't go to the gym. Sometimes you can't even go outside to go for a walk. Then you have to enforce it yourself. Personal trainers, which is obviously very, very popular out in the Middle East. You're having to self-motivate. I think that's a big thing. You've got to self-motivate to get things done within a confined space. You know, I was in Dubai, as you know, a couple of weeks ago. I came back. I had to isolate for 7 days. I had 0 interruptions, no screaming children, no nagging wife, and I had 7 days of proactive work, because what else was I going to do? Wallow in self-pity in a hotel room and not do any work? You know, it's enforced people to do something differently, take up different pastimes, open up a side business. Yes, they've been made redundant, and it's as I say, it's pushed them to do something different or to roll their sleeves up. Realistically, not everyone. There are some people that have unfortunately, you know, wallowed in self-pity and blaming the world, keyboard warriors, and everyone else. It's everyone else's fault and not theirs. Entrepreneurism, if for whatever word, or you know, people like us that have taken that risk and they've gone into business for themselves and would never look back, which you and I never would. We've had to pivot for different reasons. There has been a huge shift even before the COVID and the pandemic of social media, and similar people tend to follow similar people. So entrepreneurs are always friends with entrepreneurs on Facebook and LinkedIn, as well as clients, and that interaction comes from there. Who inspires you to do what you do? Who motivates you to go that extra mile? Who do you follow in the world within motivational speaking, or who do you read and listen to keep you motivated?
That's a great question. I suppose it's a mixture of people for different things, really. So that my friend Graham Codrington is known as one of the top futurists in the world. So I view, you know, he's now talking about the world of work changing from a 9 to 5 to a 2-3-2 model. And 2-3-2, he talks about 2 days in the office, 3 days work from anywhere, not necessarily work from home, but work from like serviced offices or hot desking somewhere. So 2 days in the office, 3 days work anywhere, and then a 2-day weekend. So the 2-3-2 he sees becoming, because people now, like my sister in a finance business, it takes an hour and a half to get into work in the morning and half an hour to an hour to get home. She's really enjoying having that 2.5 hours a day back that she's not sat in traffic. Now, she might go back in the office because it's useful. She isn't going to want to go back in the office 9 to 5 every day and have that time in traffic anymore. So both, and companies have also seen, because they've forced to have people to work from home, that it actually can work for a lot of people. So it's been proved both ways. So Graham's somebody I follow just to follow the future of work and technology and where he goes to. There are good friends of mine in different areas that I would follow for different things. My friend Jeff Ram in celebrity service is somebody who's mad about customer service, particularly in hospitality. His stuff around what would you do differently if a celebrity walked into your business is a great question for any business owner thinking, well, actually, we might treat them differently. There's a level of service perhaps we can get to that we're not delivering yet. But it's a mix of different people who I'm lucky enough to call friends that just inspire me in different ways. And sometimes it doesn't have to be an inspiring person. It can be an inspiring act, like some of the things you've done in terms of going to a brand new country, kind of branding yourself and creating from scratch was inspiring. So it doesn't have to be somebody you put on a pedestal or a major amazing person. There's inspiration in everyday life. I see a lot of parallels between sport and sales, for example. So a lot of things you see in sport or a movie can inspire. I think inspiration's all around us. It is allowing yourself to tap into that, but especially in this market where you're more remote from your support structures and other people, self-motivation, determination, resilience, consistency, discipline, all that kind of stuff is more important than ever before. So wherever you can draw inspiration from is kind of my role.
It's interesting that you say that, because we've always had a no holds barred friendship, and the majority of the time it surrounds, a few beers, dinner. I think we've had Valentine's, so it was Valentine's night the other night, a few years ago in Doha. We've obviously got the rugby sevens in Dubai, which was our first sort of rendezvous really out in the Middle East. It was actually over there, not in Doha. But there was a time 18 months ago or 15 months ago when you're right, I went to the US after having not necessarily been selected, but maybe been taken a chance on someone that you didn't know anything about, and what you did know about them was on reputation on social media. And from my perspective, I was concerned by taking that risk that you would be upset with me doing that. So I didn't showcase it until I got there, revealed it to JT. He's then turned around and went, just tell him, and get him to look at some of my stuff. And it's amazing how you turned around and went, I didn't realize that you had the guts to do that. Thanks for doing it. Apologies for not backing you on it. And I think it just took our relationship to another level as well. And it took me to another level, because I'm no longer scared of saying certain things about what I believe or my experiences or my knowledge, just in case someone turns around and says, yeah, but I don't agree with your opinion, or that's not correct, because it might be correct in where I'm from or what I'm doing, but just because someone else doesn't like it doesn't mean to say I should be negative about it, or that I should feel as if they're attacking me. As Rob Moore says, having haters and having critics is actually a good thing about it, because it motivates you to do better, or to change, or to improve yourself, or to self-educate. And in a place where you've run a business, anywhere in the world, running a business is a hard job, because you've got to be self-motivated, and you've got to be even more motivated because there's always some dickhead around the corner kicking you while you're down. There's always someone who's never run a business in their life saying, you can't do that, or that's terrible, or that's a bad idea, or how dare you, or why would you sell things in a pandemic? I mean, that was a classic that I've read time and time again. I can't believe people are selling things online in a pandemic. What else do you want them to do? Sit and wallow in self-pity like you? I mean, it's just frustrating. But it was a good time to do it. It was a really good time to do it, because it was November 2019. Then I took the chance of going and being inspired by two billionaires, which I would have never done had I not gone to the main event. And I wouldn't have gone to the main event had I not gone to the training. And I wouldn't have gone to the training had I not stood up on stage and been absolutely humiliated in front of 450 people, but with a little bit of a compliment at the end of it. And that's kind of his demeanor. That's his way of motivating people, is just being completely direct. And I do regard us now as friends, because I could pick up the phone to him and get a bit of a diverse and kick up the arse, opinion. And
I think that's an important point you make as well, Joffrey, in that, I kind of heard what you were doing. I was like, this is what I've seen. This is what the word is. Make an informed decision, but I kind of, as a friend, I have to share what the word is from the inside the industry, and the guys are telling me who are based over that side of the world. Go and make your own decision, but just be fully informed. I think, I'd kind of wanted to do that as a friend and go, I don't want to find out afterwards that you've done this, and I could have told you beforehand. So I think you're right. But that's part of being an entrepreneur. You take the information that's out there and you still make your own decision anyway. And whether it's right or wrong, you need to have the courage of your convictions, because if you don't have the courage of your conviction to do something, you shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
No, exactly. You've got to stand by it. And again, take those risks. If you don't take the risks, then nobody else is going to take the risk on you. So you've got to have conviction in your own beliefs. You've got a conviction in your own ability. And if we sit and try to please everyone, is never going to happen. You're always going to have critics. You're always going to have people that dislike you, because that's just the way that they are molded, and entrepreneurs are molded in different ways. And to be honest, I don't actually like the word. I don't like the word entrepreneur. I'd love to find another word. Business owner, yeah, that's fine. But people who like to do different things and are motivated to try different things and be a little bit risky and not on the fence are entrepreneurial. They want to do that. I mean, I've got no basis of where the word comes from. I just feel as if people don't like, other people who are not entrepreneurs hate the word. Oh, someone that's just going to sit at home and try and sell things and make a living without actually doing anything strategically is pretty much what they would probably is what they think, and that ends up annoying us, because that's not what it's about. We take more risks than the majority of people in normal positions, because we come out of that conveyor belt, and it's kind of it's now gone. That chip on my shoulder was there probably 2 years ago and definitely a year ago. It's not there now, because I do what I do, you do what you do, and if people want to go and get a job, go and get a job. I don't care. Even if my business just failed, which fortunately it's not. It has been hard times for at least a couple of years, but things are now improving from a design and build perspective, and property and things like this. It's about perseverance. If my business had failed, I think the worst decision would be to go and get a job. I would be miserable. Instead, what I personally have done, and maybe you can give me your, when you turned 40, what did you change in your life? Because it always seems to be 40 as a pivotal point, in which so many people, including you, have said you need to calm down. You're going to have a heart attack. Stop getting angry. Stop being an angry Scotsman. All the jokey stuff that is actually serious. And I'm now home more. I'm now spending more time with family, but I'm being more productive. And the ironic thing is, I read an article today, I must find it and send it to you, on LinkedIn, which was stress relates to productivity or lack of productivity, and of course being irrational, irate, angry. And these are simple things that we can actually relate to, but you have to read therapist. No, it was not. Cheeky bastard. It was. You just need to be able to read about it to then go, well, that's a fairly obvious statement, but you don't know what you don't know until it's staring you smack bang in the face. And I know it's only a few months ago, but when I turned 40, I had to say to myself, got to do something different. You can't stress about things that you can't control. There's no point in stressing about things that even you can control, because you're not going to be in a proactive position to control it if you're worrying about it. So let's engage a bit of mind. I watch Stephen Lindbergh-Jones videos most mornings as much as I can, because he's a calming influence on me. It's not a case that I want to do meditation or I want to do mindset. It's just looking at him and watching him and listening to what he says. I'm not of the discipline to go and do a 5 a.m. walk. I might do a 6:30 walk, but I'm no longer in the position in which I need to come into the office at 6:30. I am in a position in which I'm going to start the day with a cup of coffee and a walk when it's only 26, 27 degrees, instead of running into the office at 6:30 and getting home at 8 o'clock. It doesn't help, especially now. And I now want to be able to try and say things like that on shows like this with people like you, that people hopefully watch it and go, you know what, he's actually right. He might be a bit of a twat at times. He might be an angry Scotsman. He might be a hothead on the football pitch, but he's actually running a business and he's doing not bad. And he's been in the Middle East for 13 years. Kudos. Well done. But I still think he's a bit of a twat. I don't really care. I am. Sometimes because I'm too direct. And you're exactly the same. Other people in the Middle East are the same. Other people back in the UK are the same. You're never going to be able to please everyone. And as soon as you get that realization as a business owner or an entrepreneur, you're going to start to be on a better path. And there's not many people out in the Middle East that have gone through a recession in 2010, have gone through an embargo in 2017, I think, 17. That's now coming, that's coming to fruition and the borders are open. And then, God forbid, you get hit with a pandemic, not only in business, but in family life. Not being able to see my daughter for over a year, not being able to see my family for over a year. Many people are in that position as well. There's a lot more people that are in the same position as us, but we've got to keep going. We've got to keep motivated. And if this particular show or this particular episode allows people to pivot into sales, pivot into running their own business, or taking a nugget of information from what we are saying, then we're doing something right. And that's why I like doing shows like this. And that's why I love being friends with you, because you always put me in my place. You always give me the motivation. You always call me a tight Scotsman, so it winds me up, but we do it for the right reasons. So to finish off, I've had my rant. What advice would you give to people that they're maybe they've lost their job, they've always been, let's say that you've got someone that's over 50 that has always been in sales as a regional salesperson, but they can't go and see their pals that they've been clients with, or that they've had clients for the last 10 to 15 years. And they've now got to go on to Zoom and Teams and make those phone calls again, or go on to WhatsApp. What's this about WhatsApp? And your clients are contacting you on WhatsApp or Signal. It's a completely digital age. What's some quick tips that Andy Preston would give, just to finish off?
Probably the first thing from a mental health point of view is the quicker you come to terms with a new reality, the better it is for you and everyone around you. So if you're constantly fighting, why can't we do this? Why isn't the government letting us do this? Or why can't I go and be able to do this because I'm in lockdown somewhere in the world? Or why can't I do that? That you're just making yourself more angry, and it isn't really helpful. So in fact, for me, it's about, and this is something I did, and it's probably coming to more of my training now than ever before, but it's something I kind of did almost by accident in my world. It's like, well, everything's against me. I've got 150 direct competitors selling exactly the same thing, same product, same service, same quality, but I'm a 15, 20% higher price. I'm going to have to do something dramatic here. It was about trying to find the advantage, what I call the sales advantage. So where can I score points on? I can't score points on product. I can't score points on quality. I can't score points on service. I can score points. I can beat my competitors and perform better by being better motivated than they are. I can beat them by being better at prospecting than they are, being better at negotiating, closing, all the kind of physical sales skills. I can do better at being more resilient than they are. So for me, it's kind of going, let's not fight the market. The market's pretty tough for a lot of people. If you're not in technology or you're in food service, then you're doing quite well right now. It is a bit of a selective recession, but most markets are either struggling or their clients are struggling, so they're struggling to get buying decisions. So for me, no matter what your kind of role is right now, it's kind of come to terms with this is a new reality, at least for now, and accept it, and then look for the opportunities within it. If you can really master virtual selling, it's a big topic I'm doing most of my clients right now, presenting to camera, changing the way you structure your sales meetings, changing your sales process, being more persuasive at certain points, standing out in virtual selling. Mastering that is the best thing an entrepreneur or a salesperson can do right now, because that will score points over your competition that wants to fight it. That just is waiting for it to go back to normal. It is just kind of waiting for the world to turn back to how it used to be. Those people are going to be very disappointed. So come to terms with it. Look for the advantages like digital selling, like if most of your competitors are depressed, now's the time to do more prospecting. Everybody will have had service issues over the last year. Therefore, now's the best time to go after your competitors' best accounts. Look for the opportunities in adversity is probably the right thing and the best thing that we can be doing right now.
Awesome. Andy, thank you very much indeed. What does the next few months hold for you? Tell us a bit about what you're doing and how we can help you from our side. We'd love to hear more. Tell us.
So I'm really looking to get more people engaged with virtual selling, because I think that's a huge advantage for the salesperson. My regular work these days tends to be different Zoom or Teams sessions to different places of the world on the same day. So it often starts off with the Far East in the morning, goes through to the US, and in the evening having encompass the Middle East, Europe and Africa in between. We're just doing different sessions for different groups of people. Thankfully, all in English, or would have a problem. I suppose really for me, I want to inspire people to get to grips more with virtual selling. And I really want to be talking to people that want to gain the sales advantage, that want to come out of this leaner, meaner, fitter, better in terms of their sales ability than ever before. And the relationships we start now and the work we do on ourselves now will pay massive benefit for 10 years and more after this. So the people that really kind of want to move forward, if there are sales teams out there that really want to have a major impact on digital selling, standing out from the competition, that's the kind of stuff I want to be talking to. Projects working on with a big telecommunications company in Africa on selling in the corona economy and the post-corona economy. We're currently in phase 2 of the 3 phases of the corona economy. And again, we're going to need to sell differently afterwards than we have done before. We can't rely on sales skills of 10, 20, 30 years ago. So telecoms, financial services, recruitment are huge markets for me right now, but I've trained now nearly 150,000 people in 42 countries face-to-face, hundreds of thousands more online. It's the best time if people want to engage with me, even virtually as individuals. Now's a better time than ever because we have more scalability than ever before. And I've got a session next week, which Dave will kill me for because he's in the office at 3 a.m. Because I'm doing a global conference, and my client for the first time ever is accommodating in a 3-hour session all of their offices around the world, which is one down the road here in Manchester, South Africa, where their head office is, Canada, America, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia. They've got the Sydney guys coming in it. So we've got everyone together that would never have been possible in a physical location. Now we can benefit from that work together we do online. And my piece is how to become a trusted advisor virtually and get to that position as a salesperson. That kind of stuff is an exciting thing to be involved with. I've looked for the advantages of what I can achieve in the market. That's what I wish for everyone listening to this as well. Let's get through this as best we can. Let's define the advantages and get ahead of the competition. And let's, of course, make sure we keep standout selling.
Absolutely. Is cold calling on door knocking dead?
It's kind of impossible if you're in lockdown right now. What I am finding, traditional methods are coming back. Okay. So that the phone is becoming more important, particularly because everyone's doing a Zoom meeting. I'm finding people saying, can we just do it as a phone call? Do I have to have my camera on? It's never been a better time to reach people via phone than now, particularly if you've got a direct line or you've got a cell phone or mobile phone number. People, generally speaking, although, yes, we're part-time fitness instructors, part-time school teachers, part-time housemaids and childminders for a lot of us. But generally, we've got more time than ever before. We're more willing to take a phone call from a new vendor than ever before, because we're kind of using this time to think back and go, have I got the right suppliers in my business? Am I doing the right things? Should I be changing how I operate? So for me, actually prospecting by phone is great. And then face-to-face will come back a little bit. I think there are certain industries it does better than others. And I'm never one to write anything off. But I think a blend of different prospecting methods, particularly including virtual, digital, video messages, all that kind of stuff, which is part of my virtual selling package. The blend of stuff is the most important thing you can do as a salesperson. Multi-channel, multi-platform, multi-way of prospecting is the way forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, very diverse and very digital. Mr. Preston, been a pleasure. Thank you very much. We will end the show there. This has been TIQ-TV, episode 1. My guest, Andy Preston. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time when we've got Anne Williams, the ARC superstar, on episode 2. So we'll look forward to that. Andy, stay there. We'll have a chat afterwards. But I've been Simon Joss. Thanks very much. Well, thanks for joining us on TIQ TV. Take care. Bye-bye.